Okay, so we've spent a little bit of time talking about lines and talking about angles. So let's now look at parallel lines. So first we're going to define what parallel lines are. Parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. Okay, so when we look at these lines, M and N never intersect. K, J, and L never intersect. So we can see that in the picture. They put these little feathers on there, or little tiny arrows. That's what's telling us that these lines are parallel. So I can say that M is parallel to N, and I can say that K is parallel to J, is parallel to L. So that's how we can talk about lines being parallel. Now, when we talk about parallel lines, we also mention a transversal. So a transversal is basically a line that intersects two or more lines. Okay, so generally we're talking about a line cutting through two lines. Now we often say this with parallel lines, but the lines don't have to be parallel. They can be just any two lines. If I've got a line L and a line K that are not parallel, I could have a line cutting through them. And that makes this line, let's call it M, that makes that line a transversal, even though these two lines aren't parallel. But when the lines are parallel, that gives us some special things that happen. For example, when the lines are parallel, we start creating a few congruent angles that work out. So here we can look and go alternate interior angles. Well, let's talk about what the interior angles are. The interior angles are these angles here. They're in between the parallel lines. So E, F, C, and D are all interior angles. Now, alternate means they're going to be on opposite sides of the transversal. So D and F are alternate interior. Okay, so angle D is going to be congruent to angle F, and angle C is congruent to angle E. And that's because alternate interior angles are congruent when the lines are parallel. Okay, so that's important. The lines have to be parallel for any of this to be true. Okay, that won't happen in this picture because the lines are not parallel. Alternate exterior angles, well, the exterior angles are on the outsides here, HG and AB. They're on the outsides of the parallel lines. And alternate exterior angles are congruent. So angle A will be congruent to angle G. Angle B will be congruent to angle H because they alternate the transversal and are on the outside of the parallel lines. Corresponding means they kind of match up. Okay, so they're in the same basic place. So if you look at angle F, it's on top of a parallel line, but it's to the right-hand side of the transversal. So another angle that's on top of a parallel line and to the right-hand side is angle B. So those are corresponding angles, angle F and angle B. Same can be true for angle H, which would be left hand underneath, left hand underneath. So angle H and angle D. And we can do that with all the angles, angle A and angle E, angle, let's see, which one have I left out? Angle C and angle G. Okay, so those are corresponding angles. The last one we want to look at are our special pairs of angles with these parallel lines are what are called same side interior. Same side interior means they're going to be on the inside, so in the green box, but they're on the same side of the transversal. So C and F. They're not congruent. One's obtuse, one's acute. So with these, we say that angle C plus angle F will be 180 degrees. Okay, they're supplementary angles. Same is true for D and E. Angle D will be supplementary to angle E. So they sum to 180. Okay, so now that we have this idea of these congruent angles when we have parallel lines, we can actually look at some problems. So our first problem here takes these two things, focus the camera a little bit, and we know our lines are parallel, so I mark that in my picture, parallel lines, mark it with my feathers. And now I'm going to find some information. Now there's a bunch of different ways to do this. So I'm going to start with this 113 and go, oh, vertical angles. So angle C is going to equal 113 because I know vertical angles are congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. And then I can go, well, I also have corresponding angles on top to the left, on top to the left. So angle W will be 113 because corresponding angles are congruent. So corresponding angles are congruent. Okay? What's important here is that you understand the different reasoning, because now we can start going with a bunch of different ways. Remember we said alternate interior angles are congruent, so 113 and Y. So angle Y is 113 because of the alternate interior angles. Okay. Well, let's see. I'm going to write down some information in my picture here because I've got a bunch of 113s. I got to figure out where they are. So that's 113 here, 113 here, 113 here. Remember we said same side interior was supplementary. So 113 will be supplementary to X, which means angle X has to be 67 degrees. Okay, and there's our same side interiors. Same side interiors are supplementary. Well, that's going to make everything just sort of fall into place now, because that's 67. Z is alternate, is a vertical angle to that, so that's 67. A and Z are corresponding, so A has to be 67, and then B is vertical to A, so B is 67. Okay. Now this idea of using one angle to find another and then use that angle to find another and keep going through, using the information about angles to find other angles, we call that chasing angles. Okay, because you're just chasing your way through it. Last piece we want to look at, last example. We know L and M are parallel, so I'm going to mark that in my picture. And I want to find X, but I don't have a transversal. This line AB doesn't cut through both segment or through both parallel lines. So I need to do something. I could extend it, maybe that'll help. But one thing we could do is I could add in another line here, and that's going to be parallel. This is what's called the parallel postulate. So let's write that down. Parallel postulate. And it says if you are given a line and a point not on the line, okay, then there is only one line, only one parallel line through the point. So in other words, because I have this line and point B, I can only draw one line through here, through that point, that's going to be parallel. If I take that line and bend it in any way, it's no longer parallel. If I draw it anywhere else parallel, it's not going through the point. So that's the only line that's parallel to both of these and through that point. Now that we know it's parallel, now I can start doing some work. Because here's my same side interiors. Remember, they're supplementary. So that means this angle has to be 50 degrees. Now this box is really important, the box at B here, because that tells me that's a right angle. So that entire angle, if I highlight this in green, this entire angle has to be 90 degrees. Well, if this part of it is 50, then it means this part has to be 40. And if that part is 40, well, there's my alternate interior angles. So this part is 40. So X is 40 degrees. All right, you got some questions to answer after that on the Google form, and then we'll come to class and we'll start working on some problems. Have a good night.